was dope.
All right, Rufus the Villain back in the studio with Tony. What's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, dude?
What are we talking about tonight?
Today, what time is it?
Parts Unknown doesn't have a time frame.
Well, whatever space in the line that we're in.
Wherever you're listening to this.
The topic is fantasy movies.
Which I loved this idea when you brought it up to me earlier. I was like, hell yeah, dude.
Well, actually, I found myself thinking about the topic.
It's my favorite genre, honestly.
Right? I get the most out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Sci-fi fantasy is really awesome too.
Well, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, it's a different genre.
So when I think of fantasy, what automatically pops in my head is like swords and shields and wizards and magic and goblins and sorcerers and
medieval fantasy.
Yeah. So like this one is. Like this one that I'm gonna like kind of throw into the ring to start off with, I'm sure that can I use your fire again?
Yes.
Sure that you're gonna have a lot to say about this because you just recently watched the movie. Is Willow?
Yeah, actually, and that's how I got on a whole tangent.
Willow's great, man. Willow's great. I love that they had like a derogatory term without it being a derogatory term, calling somebody a peck.
Yeah.
it was. If you guys have never seen Willow.
You're missing out.
Yeah, what would you call Willow's race?
The Nelwyns.
The Nelwyns.
Yeah.
A derogatory term for them is peck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
Because they're little people.
Yeah. And then there's the brownies.
Yeah, the brownies.
I stole the baby from a stupid daikini taking a pee-pee, and a daikini is a tall person.
Yep. Well, that's almost another type of slur, really. the way the Nelwyn used it.
Yeah.
But no, that whole movie was great. It was actually quite surprising for Ron Howard. I mean, I've seen some of his other movies, and they're just not up to par with.
Yeah, we had not Ron Perlman. Val Kilmer.
Yep.
Val Kilmer and Warwick Davis.
Yep.
I can't think of any other like the big actors in that movie.
Oh, that surprises me too, because there's a couple of decent ones in there that I recognize in other like supportive roles. But
well, and the basic plot of that movie was a peck that found a human baby.
But the whole story arc really is that there's an evil sorceress named Bavmorda.
That's right. Yeah.
There's a prophecy that a certain child will be born with powers and a mark, and that child will then bring about her downfall. And then, the child is born, and then the midwife, basically sneaks it away. And
puts it in the river, right?
Yeah. And then the Nelwyn find it, and that's when you meet Warwick Davis and his family and their trials and tribulations. And then from there, they, the basicness is they have to get this child to a specific castle, and where a good king and queen will watch over her as she grows or whatever.
Right.
And it is a really awesome movie.
It's written really well.
It is, and don't get me wrong though, it does have its acting flaws.
Well, it was an 80s movie,
right? But it was still a wonderful flick.
I always loved when Willow meets Mad Mardigan.
Yeah, he's in the crow's cage.
Yeah, he starts calling him a peck. He's like, "I'm not gonna let you out. You're calling me a peck. I'm not gonna let you out."
His name is Willow.
Like his whole thing is he's the greatest swordsman that ever lived.
Mm-hmm.
And he used a really cool blade in that movie. I forget what it's called. It's the only reason I'm thinking about this is because I've been watching Forged in Fire. It's a blade it's basically got it encases your arm.
Oh yeah, it's connected to basically like a bracer.
Yeah,
and it covers the entire hand, and there's a blade actually shooting out from where the finger or where the knuckles would be. Yeah, that's actually a really cool blade. I don't know what that's called.
Well, I can only imagine the amount of power that you could get out of that.
Well, I can a blade like that though. I could think it has a lot of flaws.
You can't move your wrist.
Right, it doesn't allow for too much. I mean, it's a great stabbing weapon, but I really couldn't see too much more coming out of a blade like that.
Well, other than like the slashing power you could get out of it because of like your hand is straight and you just like swing down like you're doing a hammer fist.
Yeah, but you run a lot of risk for injuring your wrist, your forearm, and your elbow.
Yeah, and the lack of mobility for me would be like the big thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. You want to have at least some kind of fluidity in your wrists while you're doing that.
Yeah. So what's one sci-fi? What's one fantasy movie that you love?
Oh, Conan.
That was actually my next one on the list.
Conan is actually one of my all-time favorite.
Yeah, dude, Conan,
movies.
like the theme song.
Right.
The
The whole movie was just excellently done. I mean, granted, they took their liberties at the time, for
Crom.
Yeah, for from the comic, which is where they got it from.
Yeah.
And but
the Black Lotus and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This better not be Haga.
What's the lamentation of the women? Do that line.
Oh,
Conan, what do you want?
Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them before you, and hear the lamentation of the women. Then that's such an iconic line for him.
It really is, man.
But it's only fitting, though. I mean, that was his real big breakthrough movie.
When he was so physically big in that movie.
I think he had just done the Mr. Universe. He had
Yeah.
already defended his title for, I think, the third or fourth time.
Dude, he was steroided out like a motherfucker.
The thing is, I think it had a lot to do with it, but not a whole lot. Because actually, I've read his training programs, and actually, if you follow it, do a lot of you do altering in the diet and certain things because every body is different. You can actually achieve those same kind of results without having to resort to anabolic steroids.
Well, like I remember reading his autobiography when I was like 15. And apparently, like in Austria, when he started working out, his body responded to it like instantaneously. His body just like responded to it.
Well, his first
Hercules.
His first medal was actually in a competition in a beer house in
big
Austria.
Surprise. Big surprise.
And he did, I guess, the best clean and jerk.
Okay.
And so he first medal from there, and then after that, he just became obsessed with it.
And he got huge fast. He got huge fast.
And then the time he was in the army, he was exercising while he was doing tank training missions.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually quite admirable, really.
Yeah.
But that's what you do when you're really obsessed with something.
Yeah.
You do it wherever the hell you are.
So let's give the uninitiated what's Conan about?
Well, Conan is basically the last of the Sumerian people, which are basically destroyed by a vicious cult leader named Thulsa Doom. Actually played by James Earl Jones,
That's right.
which is a wonderful actor.
I always loved when he makes that lady jump off the cliff.
Oh, yeah.
Jump off and say that something like the human body's more
flesh, boy. Flesh is stronger.
Yeah. I love when he punches that camel.
Now that's another iconic thing right there, man. Punching a camel.
You couldn't do that in a movie now.
Oh no,
unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, and even then though, he still have to answer to PETA and all those animal rights activists.
I read somewhere that he actually did punch that camel.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Spit
too.
On him or something like that. And
he
fucking knocked out a camel, man.
No, man. There's some deep-seated rivalry there. Yeah.
So first there was Conan the Barbarian.
Mm-hmm. And then it was Conan the Destroyer.
Yeah, and then we have to get into a weird thing of trademarks with Red Sonja.
Yeah, I found that actually to be kind of odd. That has to be some kind of copyright issue between the studios or however it is, the way Hollywood does it.
Like, yeah.
To where they actually change his name to Lord Kildor or something like that.
He's the same fucking guy, same sword.
Same sword, same outfit, same everything, more or less. Right down to the accent. And yeah, so they changed his name,
which is weird because, like you said, Red Sonja appeared in Conan.
Yeah,
comic books.
in 1973, I think it was issue 23 of Conan that year, and
that's crazy. That's fucking crazy.
I think it is. I think it's fucked up, but I guess it's neither here nor there because anyone who's seen Conan sees that movie and knows.
Yeah, well, I remember being 9-10 years old and watching Red Sonja. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Conan.
Right.
That's Conan. Like, okay.
Right,
it's Conan,
but they don't call him Conan
because like the big difference is, and like Barbarian and Destroyer he was like wearing the loincloth with the head strap, and Sonja he actually had like a full he
had armor,
like vest and
well,
outfit.
but then again though in Conan the Destroyer he did have a set of armor that he had worn up while he was looking for Thulsa Doom.
Yeah. I
mean, so
I always liked. The scene. I remember the scene as a little kid where there's that big snake. Like all those women or whatever. And
where they're doing the sacrifice.
Yeah, I just remember it was like boobs. boobs.
I just thought it was funny how fake that snake looked.
Well, back then it didn't look fake.
Yeah, even that back then it did look fake.
But it was still cool.
It was, yes.
Yes, it was still cool.
Then Conan cuts its head off, and it's wonderful. And everyone cheered.
Would you say that would be Arnold Schwarzenegger's breakout role?
That is his breakout role.
Yeah,
Actually, that is. I mean, he had done a couple of movies. He did
A Blue-Eyed Stranger.
Yeah, and God, I can't remember what that movie was called.
Hercules.
Yeah, he did Hercules Goes to New York. Then he also did.
You remember Blue-Eyed Stranger? It was a cowboy.
Yeah, like that. He was actually in that movie with Kirk Douglas, and I can't remember who else. There was actually a couple of fairly well-known actors in that movie. But his very first break-in was in the Lucille Ball show, where he did like a 10-minute role as an Italian masseuse. And then after that, he had gotten some bit parts in like Streets of San Francisco.
Are you sure that was Lucille Ball or was it Three's Company?
It was Lucille Ball.
Okay.
That was Farewell and Goodbye. That was actually, I think, the last, either it was the last or next.
That's right. Yeah, he
episode.
was a masseuse.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep. And then after that, he got bit parts here and there, and then did the Hercules movies, and then he was also in Staying Hungry with Sally Field and Jeff Bridges.
His accent was super thick.
That was actually a trippy movie, man, all about bodybuilding. But then when he did Conan, that was the one that put him over the top as far as like an iconic role.
Well, he was an action hero at that point,
right? And then that's when things started to take off more and more for him. And he had already, I think, after Conan, he did one more title defense
in bodybuilding
for the Mr. Universe. And I think right after that is when they did Destroyer, and you can actually tell between Conan the Destroyer and Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer how big he was between those two movies.
You can see it.
Because he was actually smaller in Destroyer than he was in Barbarian.
Yeah, you can see it.
Oh yeah,
you can absolutely see it. I always loved his sword technique, and like I never took the time to look into it, like if he took any like training.
But
the thing, like the way he would hold the sword, like in between his eyes, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, that was actually a mishmash of different stances. That technique that he's using in that movie,
when he holds it upside down.
By their own admission, that was just basically they just wanted to make something look pretty, so they told him swing your sword around like this, and then make sure it ends up like that. And
pretty badass though.
Yeah, I mean, it's all essentially kind of improv.
It's Arnold style, is what it would be called.
Yeah, but it's definitely not a validated style.
So you and I both are big fans of Conan.
Oh, yeah.
That's easy to say.
Definitely.
So the next one, unless you have one to throw in, the next one I have on my list is Krull. Krull was great, dude.
That was a great movie. Liam Neeson was awesome in there. He played such a womanizer.
I loved that.
Had a wife in every town.
I loved that. I loved that. What was the blade that they had?
I can't remember what it was called, but it was that star basically that had the sword blades at the end of it.
And he'd throw it and it would come back to you.
It would come back to him, yeah. He had to pluck it out of a pit of lava.
Yeah, right. And they even did a remake with Kevin Sorbo.
No, they didn't. No,
that wasn't Krull the Conqueror?
No. The first one was Krull.
And then there's Krull the Conqueror.
No. The other one was Kull.
Kull. I'm mixing. But they also had the same blade in them.
No, it's not the same blade.
Okay,
stop you right there.
Okay,
I've seen both those movies.
Correct me.
Kull is a completely separate movie.
Well, yeah,
it has nothing to do. Those are two different movies.
I've got it.
They just happen to sound really, really, really alike.
I've got it mishmashed.
But Krull is the one with the blade.
Krull's the one that's in my head.
Yeah, that one is awesome. I didn't care too much for Kull.
I don't remember anything about Kull. But
imagine they take the Hercules show that he was on,
and turn it into a movie,
and try to make it a serious movie.
Yeah,
that was what I thought about Kull the Conqueror.
Yeah.
Poor Kevin Sorbo, man.
Well, like in my misinformation, let's just move on because my brain was like I was gonna I mishmashed the two things and I don't want to get it right. Or I do want to get it right.
Well, as far as Krull goes,
what do you know about Krull?
Krull is a fantastic fucking movie.
I used to have a poster in my bedroom.
Yeah, I remember that one. And well, basically, there's an evil entity that invades this kingdom. It's set in kind of like a weird medieval future.
Yeah. It was a mishmash of like it felt like Flash Gordon mixed with like Sinbad.
See, now that's a good way to describe it because that's exactly how it was.
Yeah.
But it was a good flick all in all, though. I mean, this like evil sorcerer, demon-looking thing steals the princess, and then it's left to her
classic story.
Yeah, her prince to go rescue her, and they basically use a lot of like D&D-esque story arcs.
Well,
within that movie.
I would be willing to put it out there to say that Krull was based off of D&D.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that for a fact.
Think about this though. Most fantasy movies that are made between 1970 and now have deep connotations with D&D because you
remember the D&D movie?
Right. Actually, I was a little disappointed in that one.
Yeah, well, it was lackluster because they didn't have funding.
Right.
Like I just remember the very, very poorly rendered Beholder.
Right. The whole thing. I mean, I don't know. I've seen some fan-based ones or some independent ones that actually.
Well, YouTube's got a lot of awesome ones.
There are some pretty decent ones out there, but the first one that hit the theaters, I was sad. And the same thing with the cartoon from back in the day.
I enjoyed
the
the cartoon.
I didn't, man. That whole fucking thing just annoyed the piss out of me.
Well, I just liked because they got on like the roller coaster.
Right, and then they get transported into the magical realm.
Yeah, that was one of my first introductions to D&D. I was like, wait, what is this?
But all the characters themselves, I mean, were just, man.
Well, I can agree with that.
The wizard was a doofus.
The wizard was a doofus.
The only semi-cool one was the one kid with, was it a goat or a unicorn or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the only one that was willing to beat the shit out of somebody. Everyone else was just cowering little boobs.
What about the horrible adaptation of He-Man?
What are you talking about?
With Dolph Lundgren?
Oh, you know.
That was bad. Man.
I started watching that the other day, and I couldn't even make it through the first part of the
bad.
movie.
Like, it has nothing to do with, the cartoon.
Well, no, it does. It does. There's Skeletor. All the characters are there.
Yeah, but the whole storyline.
Yeah, the storyline is what was completely out there. The characters were probably the only thing to really.
What was the little wizard's name? It wasn't Orko in the movie.
No, not in the movie. And that was my big.
It was like Gizmo or something.
Yeah, that was my big gripe with that. Was Orko was not in that movie.
Yeah,
and I love Orko was for me my favorite character in that whole fucking show.
And there was no Battle Cat or Cringer,
right? I mean, what the fuck? I mean, the gall,
right. Like how dare? Like you have a.
And how dare they drag decent actors through such a horrible movie? I like Dolph Lundgren.
Who played Skeletor?
I can't remember his name.
Super famous guy.
Yeah, actually, he's a very well-rounded actor, and for the life of me, I can't remember who he is, and I don't have much life on my phone because it will die soon. Otherwise, I would look it up. But long story short, He-Man was a horrible movie.
Dolph Lundgren was a dope-ass He-Man, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, they could have done a lot with him as the actor, and a lot of all the other actors. But whoever wrote it deserves to get kicked square in the nuts.
Yeah, well, there's a reason that there was no He-Man 2. There's a reason for that.
Oh, but then again, though, I mean, it all depends. I've seen some horrible sequels.
Well, a lot of times the first is always better.
Right.
But here's my, this is kind of off topic, but for me, Terminator 2 was the best.
Yeah.
Judgment Day was the best.
Judgment Day was the best. Even had George Thorogood.
So, do you have another one in mind?
Well, in remembrance of the late great Rutger Hauer, Lady Hawk.
Lady
Hawk was, and that's funny because that's his first movie too.
Really?
No, I take it back. No, Blade Runner was his first movie.
Blade Runner, okay.
And then after that, I think it was the Lady Hawk right after that, or there was another one in between there, but that was within the first 3 movies he had ever done as a professional.
Lady Hawk, I remember having the VHS.
Yeah.
And just watching it over and over. Give the listeners a rundown of what Lady Hawk was.
Oh, it's been a while since I've seen it, so I'm a little foggy, but I remember basically Rutger Hauer is
sorry.
Crap. He's a knight. Oh fuck, I can't remember the whole story.
Wasn't he a knight in King Arthur's court?
Yeah, he was a knight in a court of some kind, and then his betrothed was put under a curse that turned her into a hawk by day, or no, turned her into a hawk but the only time that she could be transformed into a human was within like between certain hours of the day or something like that, like in the early
Well, I remember
morning.
they even had talks to turn it into a TV series.
Yeah, and that I wish I need to rebuy that movie. It's
Lady
been a
Hawk was
while.
badass.
Yeah,
man.
it was. Fucking Matthew.
Dude, like right, like Rutger Hauer gets a big shout out for me. Dude.
Yeah.
Everything he did was badass.
I mean,
man.
he's been in some.
Have you
of
ever
my
seen Hobo with a Shotgun?
Yep. Blind Fury is one of my
Blind Fury.
favorite movies. He plays a blind swordsman.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is so fucking
You
awesome.
remember they have him in the back of a truck and he throws his sword out
Mhm.
and he like counts the time to like when they stop
Yep.
and like he knows like how far back to go find his sword.
Right.
Yeah, that was just a good
Or the scene where he cuts the wasp in half.
Dude, fucking basically Stick, man.
Right.
If you guys don't know who Stick is, read a Daredevil comic book.
Well, don't read new Daredevil. Read old Daredevil.
1985 to 90.
Yep.
That's where you'll get a good.
And that's where you'll actually get some decent information and not this exodus of hodgepodge excrement that is now being thrown out at longtime comic fans such as myself.
My next.
No bitterness.
No bitterness. Hashtag no bitterness. My next one, this is an obvious one, but Lord of the Rings.
Ah, yes, the Tolkien series.
Yeah, Tolkien was pretty awesome, man.
Now, but let's go in chronological order. I mean, you had The Hobbit first.
The Hobbit first. So
And then
there and back again. If you go to the books, it's The Hobbit.
Mhm,
Then there and back again.
Mm-hmm.
And then is it
Desolation of Smog.
Desolation of Smog, and
and
then
Battle of the Five Armies.
and then Return of the King, right?
No, that's Lord of the Rings.
I thought that was one of the books.
Return of the King. No, they're all books. I mean,
well, I'm just trying to think of what
but
order
in
they were
the Lord of the from The Hobbit, you have the first one, The Hobbit, and then that's comprised of it's one solid book, but 3 different story chapters,
Mhm.
and multiple story chapters, but it's all one big ass book.
Oh, yeah.
So you have The Hobbit, and then you have the Lord of the Rings series that came after
Okay.
that. So after The Hobbit, it's Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, then The Two Towers, and then the last book in the series is Return of the King.
Oh, okay. So a quick rundown for anybody that hasn't read the books. It's a hobbit is basically a little person.
With big hairy feet.
Big hairy feet. And Gandalf the Grey, one of my favorite characters in literary history, Gandalf the Grey, comes to Bilbo Baggins, the main character, and says, "Let's go on this journey. I forget where.
Well, the idea is that he basically wants to hire Bilbo as a burglar
and the 12.
Yeah, and for the dwarven prince, or at this point the dwarven king.
God, what was his name?
Thorin Oakenshield.
Oakenshield, yeah.
And
I love that in the book they make the little mark on his door, and they all keep knocking on his door and coming in.
Was it like almost like a moon rune?
Yeah.
But so they basically get him involved to be a burglar to steal the Arkenstone from
Smaug, right?
Yeah, from underneath Smog, and that's they go on the adventure, and there's a big battle at the end.
Dwarves and ogres and dragons,
humans, everybody's in it. And then after that, you get the Lord of the Rings series. But what I think is funny, though, is that I really wish they would have figured out a way, or I wish Tolkien would have written more about the precursor to The Hobbit.
Okay.
With Sauron the Deceiver, Isildur,
Oh, yeah.
all that, the forging of the ring and all those wonderful things.
The 12.
Yeah, exactly. The 12 rings, one ring to rule them all, blah, blah, blah. And but they didn't. He didn't write those books. He just did a really elaborate history on it, which is wonderful. And then you have the Lord of the Rings series.
Right.
And then later on, they made the movies, which I thought was kind of funny that they start off with Fellowship of the Ring and then bounce backwards to the Hobbit, kind of like what Star Wars did. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, damn it, they're going backwards. I don't like this.
I really loved Ian McKellen as Gandalf.
Yes, definitely.
I thought that was really good. To be perfectly honest to all the listeners out there, the very first book I ever sat down and read cover to cover was The Hobbit.
Nice.
That's the very first time I committed and read an entire book cover to cover.
See, first time I tried to read The Hobbit, it was actually a copy in Braille that my grandfather had.
Whoa.
And he was trying to teach me how to read Braille by teaching me how to read The
That's
Hobbit.
got to be hard with words like Bilbo and Braille.
Well, it is, but it isn't.
It's a good way to, good place. It's good, though.
There's certain Braille patterns that you can easily formulate words without having to use so much space. Then there are other ones where you literally have to spell it out.
Spell out the words.
With the Braille patterns. And it is really fucking awesome. I actually wish... Actually, he still has that somewhere in his house. I should actually see if I can get that.
That would be cool. That'd be
I always
cool
wanted to... I mean, that was the thing. I always wanted to learn how to read in Braille.
It's not easy. Like, my big thing is because I work in a kitchen, my fingertips are all calloused and stuff.
Right.
It'd be really hard for me to feel, like, the tiny little subtleties of Braille.
Yeah, it's easier for my right hand than it would be for my left. Cause,
well, you play the guitar.
Yeah, I play the guitar, and my left hand has a whole bunch of callus on it, so I'd have to read it right-handed. But it's not really that hard once you learn the alphabet and you pick up a few lessons on it. You know,
it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking super interesting.
Especially like with me, because I get migraines like a motherfucker now and then
just
when I try to
close
read.
your eyes and read something.
Yeah, just close your eyes and just drift your fingers across the book.
Let your fingers tell yourself a story.
Right.
That's not a bad thing.
No,
it's
it
not
isn't
a bad thing at all.
Well, it's a handy skill to have.
So the next one I have is Princess Bride.
Cary Elwes.
Yeah, I always loved like when he's got the cups with poison in it.
Oh yeah.
Like I know that you would know that I would know that you would know that I would switch the cups.
They were both poisoned.
They were both poisoned. Both poisoned. But I took it was like he was
he is immune.
Yeah.
He took little doses over extended periods of time.
And that Andre the Giant. And
yeah, that I thought was so fucking cool. That's actually what got me to watch that movie because I had already seen him in WWF.
I'm Montego Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
He later on go into the movie or the show Criminal Minds.
Criminal Minds. Oh yeah, that's right. Princess Bride was a lot of fun for me.
It was a great movie.
Just because of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
The characters were like, I'm drawing a blank. The main character, the guy that wore the black.
Cary Elwes.
Yeah.
The Dread Pirate Roberts.
That's right. And I love the swamp rats.
Yeah.
That's another one that if you guys haven't watched that movie, fucking watch that movie.
Yeah, that movie was definitely awesome. I loved that movie. But, there's actually quite a wonderful array of fantasy movies out there, like Legend.
Dude. Legend was... I loved... You know how I feel about Rush.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved the score.
Oh, yeah.
I fucking loved it, dude. I fucking... Tim Curry, Tom Cruise. I don't know who played the princess.
I just love the fact that Tim Curry was the devil.
Well, every part of that movie to this day fucking holds up for me.
Right.
Like, I love, like, when Tom Cruise's character and the dwarves are like, and Tim Curry's like basically hell, and like they're trying to get out, and he's like, "We're barbecued," and like that one elf gets shot through the hat, and it breaks his bottle of liquor. And you're like, oh man,
wow, it's been a long time since I've seen
like
that one.
when they approach the lake and the fucking lake goblin comes out, and you know what I'm talking about,
yeah.
Right? And he cuts his head off, and it's all.
It's been such a long line. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, that was Tom Cruise's first movie.
It was, yeah, it was.
Starring role.
And I'm drawing a blank on who played the princess, but just like all the visuals in that movie were amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, for the time.
Well, to this day, like I haven't watched it in probably 10 years.
No, it's been longer than that. Put it this way, I think I was still in middle school last time I saw that movie.
It was a good movie, man. It was a really good movie. Like that was one of those VHSs that I watched like over and over and over.
Right.
Like when the goblins cut off the unicorn's horn, because that's the whole point of the movie.
Yeah.
They're trying to save the last unicorn.
Yeah.
They could have called it The Last Unicorn, honestly.
Right.
But I probably wouldn't have watched the movie if it was, The Last Unicorn. I'm like, that's a girl movie.
So they just call it Legend.
Let's just cast Tom Cruise and call it Legend. People will watch it at that point.
Yes, they will.
So how do you feel about the next one being The Never-Ending Story? I like The Never-Ending Story. That I don't know if you call that fantasy, but it was...
It kind of
you had dragons, pirates, Indians.
I would say it's a fantasy movie. I would think.
Well, like in particular for me, do you remember The Nothing from that?
No,
dude. Okay, so The Nothing to this day still gives me a fear of dogs.
And yet you own one.
Yeah. Well, I have a fear of this one couldn't fucking hurt a fly. Well, she hurts bugs, but stink bugs. But like the Nothing in the original movie was like this. It was called The Nothing because it was everywhere all the time. it was like everywhere all the time, see, and it made my mic fall. It was like, don't talk about me. It was like everywhere all the time, and it took the physical form of a wolf. And what I still to this day have dreams of a talking dog, because this thing fucking Sebastian was the main character, and he was like talking him, threatening him with like this Jim Henson type of dog face puppet, and to this day, dude, it fucking creeps me out, man.
Fucking puppets, man.
He's like, I am the Nothing. Like, that shit gives me the willies, man.
I am the Nothing.
Yeah. What's another one of your favorites?
Oh, let's see. I'm going through the list, man.
There's so many good ones from when we were kids, and like
there was a lot of B fantasy.
What was that one
movies.
with Sean Connery where he's wearing like the red leather and shit? You know, like he's like basically wearing like a red leather S&M suit. Man-O-War or something like that.
I don't know.
No, it started with a Z, but that was a weird one.
Oh, is it? I mean, he wore red in Highlander.
Well, no, it was like red leather S&M suit, and he had like had a ponytail.
It was Sean Connery.
Yeah. I'll Google it.
Fuck if I know.
Watch this. Sean Connery red leather suit.
Hopefully we don't get.
I found it.
Hopefully there's no.
It's called from 1974. It's called Zardoz.
Zardoz.
Sardos.
Wow.
Yeah. Fresh from James Bond. See, look. Yeah, I'll post a picture to the page so you guys can see that
I
shit.
wish they would have included that picture in his commencement speech into the Actors Guild Hall of Fame.
Like, that's 70s sci-fi.
That's a straight up red gimp suit, dude.
Yeah. So do you got any more?
Yeah, that's the thing.
What about 13th Warrior?
Yeah, you got to talk about mythological fantasy.
13th Warrior was a real good one for me. I was thinking about it the other day because I rewatched it, and they called it the Fire Worm. The Fire Worm. And it was what it was.
A bunch of cave people.
Yeah, a bunch of cave people coming down the side of a hill with fucking torches and stuff. That was I always loved that movie because of believe it or not, I really enjoyed Antonio Banderas' acting in that.
Yeah, he was actually really good in that movie.
Where he like learned their dialogue just by watching them,
listening and watching.
And they called him Little Brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one. That's another VHS that I've watched over and over again.
Well, another one that I like is actually Excalibur.
Excalibur,
was one of my favorites.
Holy shit!
Patrick Stewart was in that one.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
And so was Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
And a whole throw of other wonderful characters.
It's hard for me, like when we think of fantasy, it's hard for me not to throw in sci-fi.
All right.
But, like there's a lot of like sci-fi fantasy.
Well, it's kind of like Krull. Krull, it's set in like a...
Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
Well, I can't think of Krull without thinking of Flash Gordon.
All right. Yeah. There's a lot of similarities. And then, let's see. I think Excalibur was one of my favorites, though.
One of mine, like the last one I wrote down that was just like one of my favorites was it was Sinbad and then Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, like I loved both of those movies. Like that was like towards the end of claymation and stop.
Well, no, it wasn't even towards the end. That was
actually Jason and the Argonauts was.
No, that was done in the 70s.
Jason and the Argonauts. I don't know the exact date. I'll have to look that up. But that's the last one I remember seeing. Like
that's
the
thing. Claymation lasted until the birth of CG.
That's true.
Which was
that's
in
true.
the mid to late 80s.
Well, you make a good point because there was a lot of claymation, like in Dawn of the Dead, and Evil Dead.
Evil Dead. I mean, then those were main staples of the 80s.
There's a specific thing I'm thinking about, like the large scale monsters that were, like stop motion. You like the Hydra and Sinbad.
They did that. I mean, that was the thing. They did that too. I mean, it was the claymation was used in any kind of facet that it could be used in.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that changed was just the quality.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good way to put it.
That's why it probably stands out so much.
It's the last one I remember. I'll put it that way.
Because the heyday of claymation was that bridge between the late 70s to the mid 80s, and then after that, CGI started getting developed a little bit more and more.
And practical effects,
right? And then by the time the 90s rolled around, he had movies like The Lawnmower Man, which were breaking the mold with CG. And then all of a sudden,
Lawnmower Man was amazing, by the way.
That was a great movie.
Job.
I was watching that the other day, actually. But then you also have, your Robin Hood movies.
Oh, okay.
All the many, many different versions of them.
Errol Flynn.
Yeah, it was nice. Just about to say, ranging from Errol Flynn to Russell Crowe.
Oh, yeah. Errol Flynn's the first one I ever saw. He did a movie that my dad had me watch when I was a kid. It was called Swashbucklers.
Yep.
And I forget what his character's name was in that.
Errol Flynn.
Yeah,
that dude had liked to party.
He liked the women. He liked the women and the drugs.
Hey, man, when you're a rich movie star, why the fuck not?
Why not? So I'm trying to think of one more real good fantasy movie. Like, let's say, I don't know, drawing a blank. I think we might have covered all the best ones.
We definitely covered a lot of the really good ones.
Conan was one of my favorites for sure.
And the thing is, I like both of those movies for different aspects. I like the first one because it's the essential origin story of Conan. And then the second one, which integrates more of a D&D type of story where you have the thief, you have the mage, you have the barbarian, you have the knight, which is Bombata. Played by Wilt Chamberlain, which was an awesome role.
You ever see that picture of them next to each other?
Yeah, dude. Well, Wilt stood like 7 foot something.
Well, I saw a picture of Wilt Chamberlain. I was going to call him Conan. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Andre the Giant all at the same time of filming all those movies that we talked about.
Yeah,
standing next to each other, and fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger being the powerhouse, still fucking.
He was the smallest guy in that row. That's what I think is funny. But I mean, I actually preferred the second one more.
Yeah.
Because of just the way it was written. It was definitely written in a very D&D story-esque.
Well, and then there's definitely a lot of like 70s, 80s, and 90s fantasy that we haven't touched on. But what we've touched on was our favorites that we watched and what we enjoyed.
And why we love them so.
Yeah. All right, brother. Thank you for recording with me, man.
Yeah, no, but thank you.
All right. I'm gonna invite you guys to listen to us again next time, and thanks again for listening.
Pray to Krull.
Pray to Krull.